Hey folks, and welcome back. Hey, we appreciate you guys here at BTP, and if you're not following us on social media, make sure you do so. On Facebook, we're BTP Sports Talk. Go to it, you'll see my mug there, can't miss it. On Twitter, we are at BTP Sports. Once again, we do what we do for you guys, and we appreciate all your support. And Tula, we're going to continue with some boxing here with Ricky Jackson, Rich Walker, Mike Tula. We were talking about Antonio Tarver and his career. Tula, what's next? What you got for me?
Well, kind of wanted to touch up on the business of boxing. Mr. Jackson alluded to it in our previous segment. And I wanted to talk about, on HBO, Jim Lampley has a show called The Fight Game, and he recently went off on Al Haymon and his tactics for increasing the most rewards with minimizing the risk as much as possible. Essentially, he talked about boxers being more entertainers and assets and commodities more so than actual athletes competing for supremacy. And what he talked about was, he had a quote, and it really kind of resonated with me. He said, "If you had a sense that 2004 was a year somewhat devoid of compelling top-level competition, you would not be off base." And that kind of rang true to me. Not only, that's something that the average common, boxing fans are always complaining about, how boxing is dead, and how there's no real compelling matchups. But he called out Al Haymon. And Al Haymon, just to give us some statistics, he signed at least 40 to 60 fighters in the last year, since the start of 2014.
Wow.
So he's becoming a main mainstay, a main player in the game.
In 1 year.
In 1 year.
Wow.
In 1 year. And I kind of wanted to toss it to Mr. Jackson.
Yeah.
Just.
Well, let me touch on this.
Yes.
I know Al Haymon personally. You got to think way back until the days of the Jazz Fest. He was the big-time promoter for Frankie Beverly Mays and that whole Jazz Fest circuit that did well for about 20 years. So he's a promotion guru. Also, I think he graduated from Harvard, so the guy's pretty smart. There's no question about that. But I spoke with Al Haymon about maybe 15, 20 years ago when he had expressed an interest in getting in boxing. I knew him through some associations. He said, I want to get into the fight game, and are you interested in discussing that with me on me managing you? I said, well, you don't know anything about boxing. He said, I don't know anything about boxing, but I know everything about promotions. So I might not match you right, but you'll be the most famous guy in the world if you let me come in. I said, well, let me think about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now that I see what he's done, I probably should be regretting that right about now. But he is a very smart guy. He thinks outside the box, and I think that's what boxing needs, is someone outside the box, especially the business of boxing. So I don't see anything wrong with the sport where ESPN said it's the most dangerous sport of all sports in history. It's more dangerous than football, more dangerous than what? Golf, more dangerous than tennis. Yeah. And I know you guys played sports, so I mean, there's a little hesitation, reluctance to believe that. But it is a very dangerous sport. So should you get top dollar for it? Of course you should. So I'm not going to say that Haymon is doing a bad job. I think he's doing a very effective job with what we're sacrificing as fighters. Because sometime in the sport of boxing, once you go through 5, 10 years of boxing, you're never the same. No matter how safe or how good your career was, you're never the same. I think that's, and the same thing with football. I mean, physically, you got your physical limitations that you have acquired because of your participation in the sport. But boxing, again, there's that mental destruction that goes on because of the constant impact to the brain. Now we call it, when the fighters, the football players have the concussions.
Concussions, yeah.
I had concussions for 20 years. And that was just part of the sport. But, now it's a big issue. It's a concern, and I totally understand that. But so I think that it's justifiable for a fighter to reap the most benefit for every fight he gets. So I'm for that. Now, the strategy behind Haymon is matching sometime the better guy against the softer guy, which sometimes waters down the sport and make it not appealing as it once upon a time was. That's kind of my concern with it. You don't see the best of the best stepping in the ring. And that makes the sport boring. I mean, we need that excitement that was in the 70s, 80s, even back in the 60s, that made boxing a big attraction. You know, so now it's kind of so controlled till you don't get that effect as it once upon a time had on the average boxing fan or even the novice fan. So that's going to come back in time, you know, because you can only water it down so much to where the demand, and I'm going to throw this in, the Pacquiao and Mayweather fight. You know, the public has been demanding that fight for a while.
Years.
And now it's finally, seems to be going to happen on May 2nd, based on the red flags that are now saying this fight has to happen now or is once again done. So that's what that does. It creates the desire to see big fights. Now, here's the thing about the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. I'm going to throw this into the equation. This is going to be the highest grossing fight
Ever.
in the history of not boxing, but sports.
I was just going to say, yeah, definitely.
That alone makes a statement, you know. So this is going to be right now they say if the fight is done in Dubai, it can be $1 billion fight.
That's a lot of money over there.
You know, yeah. So, I mean, they're going to tie in the U.S. to Dubai and make it a global activity that's going to generate maybe $1 billion. You know, and anytime that happens, everybody got to be excited because basketball players will eventually get paid more. Football players will eventually get paid more. And, of course, boxers will. Because once you set that precedence of $100 million in one night, that's going to become one day the norm.
Yep.
You know? So, I mean, so it's bigger than boxing sometimes when you see something like that takes place. So that's why I'm excited about the Mayweather and Pacquiao fight because of what it does, not only in boxing, but outside of boxing for athletes. Now, just on this fight itself, I don't think it's going to be the fight that we have been hoping for, as far as the competition that should have been, you know, done about 5 years ago.
Right.
Pacquiao's older. Mayweather's older. Pacquiao seems to have gotten a little better in his last fight, but again, I think this fight is a cat and mouse game. Mayweather's the mover, puncher, defensive specialist. Pacquiao is the straight ahead, sometimes over aggressive, unorthodox fighter. So that's just a bad combination for a good fight.
Yeah.
You know, but it's been hyped up very well. And Al Haymon, again, has something to do with promoting it very well. And I think it's, you know, it's going to happen. And when it happens, I think we're going to be let down a little bit about the end result.
Now, the thing that I want to touch on about the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight is the first thing that comes to mind is Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis.
Right.
Everybody wanted that fight for so long.
Great
and
example.
then once it finally happened, they both walked into the ring on walkers. And Lewis basically beat the stuffing out of Mike.
But what if it had happened when it was supposed to happen?
That's what I'm talking about.
That would have been a great fight.
Absolutely.
Same result probably would have came a little later.
So? Yeah, because
Tyson was a little faster, a little bit more confident at that time. And then Lennox Lewis was a little not as great of a boxer as he became when he got under Manuel Stewart. Because when they were supposed to fight the first time, Lennox Lewis had a different trainer.
Right.
Now, Lennox Lewis became really good when he got with Emmanuel Stewart.
And that was after he got knocked out by Hasim Rahman, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He got smart after that.
He came back.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, he killed Rahman. That second
But, I mean, Rahman changed after he won that fight, of course. So, I mean, the lights, camera action kind of changed his personality, his behavior, and then didn't train the same. I was in camp with him when that fight took place.
With Rahman?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, so he went from suburbs to Hollywood.
Off that one fight. He didn't do the Buster Douglas after he beat Mike.
And the jacket with all the diamonds on it. I said, here we go now.
And that second fight, Lennox knocked them diamonds right off that jacket.
Yeah, diamonds came flying, and so did the glasses.
Now, we'd be remiss to let a segment about anything go and not have the one and only great sports Morpheus give us his insight on it. Big Rich.
Cue the drum roll.
Yeah, right? Talk to us and the fans. Give us your thoughts on, as like we said, you and I are probably the most casual boxing fans on this set right now. Give us your thoughts on the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight as far as the impact on the sport, like Rick was talking about.
Well, I think Rick is, he's right on, and it's being literally the biggest sporting event ever in the history of mankind. But I'm gonna go back to, I saw an interview where Mike Tyson had several years ago, and he talked about the importance of the heavyweight division. And we have to get back to where the heavyweight division is driving the bus for boxing.
Like the 70s with Ali and
like those
Frazier.
70s, 80s, even the 90s. The heavyweight
even the 90s.
division.
That's
drove
when
the
it's
bus.
probably started though in the 70s, yeah.
But, you know, it's gonna be a lot of hoopla. It already is gonna be even more. I think there's gonna be a couple of more delays or stalls or false starts it pertains to this fight actually happening. And this all a part of a plan to get as much interest as possible because, like you said, the in-ring product itself is not going to be what it used to be. But it's pretty much it's a glorified WWE event.
And I think with Mayweather, you know, having his last 2 fights, approaching the end of his contract, I think this was a long haul plan that they kind of agreed to, both sides, that they're going to go out. I mean, that's way too much money to say no to.
Yeah.
And it's way too big an event. And they have to view this as a golden parachute. At least I would if I was Mayweather, especially Al Haymon advising him. To for sure have that as the last fight of your career, or at least, you know,
The last series.
Start off as a
Yeah,
series because I'm sure there's going to be a rematch clause in there.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want no, you know,
Well-
Rocky 1, ain't going to be no rematch, do 1-1. You know, that's for you, Tarver.
Well, you got to think also that Pacquiao's had 4 fights that resulted in rematches. So he's notorious for having fight upon fight upon fight against the same guy, against the same guy. I can count about, they got Eric Morales, he did 3 fights with.
Marquez.
He
Marquez
did
was
Marquez, 4 fights with Marquez.
Yeah, 4 with Marquez.
You know, so I mean, he's a kind of a junkie on rematches. So it would be normal for him to have a rematch, 1 and 2 Mayweather, which would probably be a pretty interesting fight.
You know what? Really quick, Ricky, in about 10 seconds, who won that fight between Manny and Timothy Bradley? Real quick. In your mind. Not who won.
Not just in my mind. I mean, it was, you got to understand what was going on with that, too. This is what I was told through the grapevine. Bradley, Pacquiao was end of his contract with Bob Arum. So to get him to continue the contract, he had to lose that fight, and then now you rematch, and now you re-sign with me again.
There you have it from
There
the
you
man.
go.
BTP
That's
Sports.
boxing.
We'll be right back after
Boxing
the
at
break,
its
folks.
finest.